Greetings, everyone, and thanks for joining us on this webinar from student to professor, how Lewis and Clark's Animal Law LLM launched a career in academia, brought to you by the Center for Animal Law Studies at Lewis and Clark Law School, where our mission is to educate the next generation of animal law advocates and advance animal protection through the law. I'm pleased to introduce my co-panelists for today, Rebecca Critser, Animal Law LLM graduate from Lewis and Clark Law School, and an adjunct faculty in our online program. My name is Reddy, and I am the director of the Animal Law program, as well as a graduate from Lewis and Clark. And I'm also pleased to introduce our CALS Associate Director, Professor Megan Senatori. And just to offer a bit of an overview of today's presentation, after this welcome, Professor Critser is going to be discussing her experience with the program and her sort of transition into an academic career. And following that, Professor Senatori will be discussing some of the work that our alumni in action are doing. And following that, we will shift to Q&A. But before we get there, I just want to note the deadline for our online program is May 19th. And that is, again, for the online program, as the in-person application deadline has already passed. So with that, I will turn it over to Professor Critser.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you all today. And thank you to the Center for Animal Law Studies for having me join you today. I'm excited to talk to you about my experience at Lewis and Clark and the Animal Law program there. I'm going to walk through sort of three major headings. One is my experience as a student there and now as an alum, my experience in teaching animal law. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about an article that I worked on while at Lewis and Clark that was recently published in the Indiana Law Review blog. So first, speaking a little bit as an alum, I just want to speak to sort of why I chose to pursue the LLM at Lewis and Clark. When I went to law school, I knew that I wanted to be in the animal law field. I was part of bringing in a SOLDIF chapter and part of bringing an animal law course. But as many of you might know or have experienced, it's not always easy to break into animal law right out of law school. So I actually ended up working in legal aid, helping trans folks get healthcare coverage in Indiana, where it's not necessarily a given. And it wasn't until after we got back to the US, where my husband and I were abroad for his graduate program, that I decided to take that opportunity that was a bit of a reset and really focus on animal law. And I was thrilled when I found Lewis and Clark, because part of I had put my hat out in the ring and applied for many animal law positions. I had gotten pretty far down the process in a handful of them, but I kept getting this feedback that I didn't have direct experience in animal law. And lo and behold, here was an entire program really designed to provide that experience and expertise. I remember the first time I ever reached out to the program, I actually emailed Dr. Reddy to ask about their available scholarships. And I will say a large part of why I made the decision to apply to the program was because of the interaction I had with Dr. Reddy. I think one thing you will find with this program is that all the faculty, Dr. Reddy, Professor Senatori, and everyone else is very kind and very supportive, very much there for their students, both when you go through the program, whether it's an LLM or another degree, as well as after you graduate. They're really good at providing a community of the alumni that bring them together and support their careers. In addition to that, I really experienced what we call the bubble, which is this sense of community amongst your peers. It's a unique opportunity to get to know like-minded people in your field who may be subspecializing in a different area, maybe taking a slightly different approach than you, but still have the ultimate goal of helping animals. And so I think those two prongs of being able to learn from and grow from the program And the faculty that are in this program, as well as the peers that come to the program, are two of the biggest takeaways of why I think this program is so important. I certainly wouldn't be where I am today in my career if I hadn't gone to Lewis and Clark and gotten my animal law LLM. And so I'm just going to transition a little bit and talk about teaching, because when I left Lewis and Clark, I knew two things. I knew I wanted to focus on animals and science, and I knew I wanted to focus on eventually developing my teaching portfolio and becoming, ultimately my goal is a sort of a full-time professor that teaches animal law. And so I'm going to talk about a couple different pathways that you can take to teach animal law in relatively broad strokes. And then I'm going to talk about two courses that I'm really thrilled to be teaching this year at Lewis and Clark. So to begin, teaching animal law, teaching law generally, you can kind of take two pathways. One is a full professorship, and you can take the full professorship pathway in one of two ways. You can do the traditional route, which would mean that you go on the market, which is this fancy term. And if you're interested, I would encourage you to look it up, where you apply and you sort of throw your hat in the ring saying, I want to teach law. And all the people who want to teach law throw their hat in the ring. And all the law schools who have open positions go to that pool of people, and they select candidates to interview and ultimately hire from that pool. Now, as somebody who specifically wants to teach animal law, I will say it will be one of the more difficult paths to teach animal law quickly. And that's not to say that it's not a valuable pathway, especially if you know you want to teach law. Because I would say you can incorporate animal law into any legal class. It doesn't have to be specifically slated as an animal law class. You can also, once you get in the door as faculty, offer to guest lecture a single class in other related courses like an environmental law, a health law, an ag law with an animal law lens. And also, once you're in the door, you can actually work to bring an animal law course into the program or into the school and build from there. So it's definitely a route to consider, but you should be aware of the pros and the cons. The other branch of this full professorship route, which I think is maybe a little more typical for people who want to teach animal law immediately, is what I call the less traditional or non-traditional route, which is looking for openings at schools specifically for animal law. So for example, in the past couple of years, Oklahoma has had an opening. I think there's a school in Ohio. I think GW also has recently brought somebody in to add to their animal law program. And so that's another route you can consider. You might find that it takes longer to find the position that way, so you may want a backup option, but it's certainly worth looking for those opportunities. The third option, which really stands in contrast to this full professorship route, is doing adjunct teaching, which is the route that I've currently taken. And two things I want to say right off the bat, just to be 100% transparent: adjunct teaching will not pay the bills. And so most people who adjunct teach also have full-time jobs. So you have to be sure to be mindful of your time commitments, having a full-time job and also doing adjunct teaching. But the really great thing about it is that it gives you an opportunity to confirm that you want to teach, to explore what it's like to work with students. I will say, going through law school and other legal programs, it's very different being on the teaching side than it is on being the student side of things. And so going through the adjunct process can give you some experience and exposure to that. It's also a great opportunity to either develop or revise a syllabus, to put together reading materials, to get your hands-on experience with student assessments. And so, I've really found it to be a valuable route, and I'm grateful to have this opportunity. So the two courses that I'm going to teach this year at Lewis and Clark, the first one is the Law and Ethics of Animal Testing that I'm actually co-teaching with Dr. Paul Locke. And I believe, if I'm not getting this mistaken, Dr. Paul Locke has actually taught this course for about 10 years now. I had the opportunity to take the course as a student, and I TA'd for the course over the past 2 years. And I'm really excited to get to teach it with Dr. Locke this summer. We've been working really hard over the last couple of months to revise and update the course. And for those of you who are looking to apply and potentially enroll in the Lewis and Clark Animal Law Studies program, I would love for you to take this course. We see this course as an opportunity for you to get hands-on experience, knowledge about animals in research and science, and to really grapple with the tensions that come up in this space. Many people may want to advocate for the approach that we should remove animals from all labs tomorrow. And if we just remove the practical restraints of that suggestion, we still have to think about what are the consequences of that. The consequence, for example, might be that a drug isn't developed that could potentially save someone's life, or a medical device isn't developed that could potentially improve the quality of life of someone's life. And so what Dr. Locke and I really try to do is not to dictate what you should think, but is to give you the ethical framework to think about how to balance those interests and competing values. And then, of course, we talk about what the laws have been, what the laws currently are, and what the laws maybe could or should be. It's a really great course, and if that sounds interesting to you, I hope you will think about taking it. The second course that I'm going to be teaching is in the fall, and it's an animal legal philosophy. This course has actually been taught at Lewis and Clark in the past, and I'm really excited to get a chance to take my own sort of spin on this topic. The lens that I plan on taking is very much a rights focused lens. I think law schools generally, legal education generally, doesn't do enough to teach people about rights theory. And I've come to learn that there's a practical reason why that is that many lawyers can get away with a more common understanding of what rights are and what rights are not. But in the animal law space, where we're actively advocating, some of us at least, for animal rights, it's really important to have a more in-depth understanding of what that means. So this course in the fall, the Animal Legal Philosophy course, is going to take a look at sort of 3 phases. One is thinking about how did this idea of rights come about? It's sort of a historical lens looking at animal rights that rose up as a backlash to animal welfare with the onset of new welfarism, and then even a more modern lens that looks at, maybe this dichotomy between rights and welfarism is a bit of the wrong question, essentially, is what some people argue. Then we're going to move to asking not why rights so much, but how rights. And this is really the legal philosophy, the jurisprudence part of the course, where we're going to look at, if we think rights are the right avenue, what legal tools do we have available to us to sort of push that forward? And then finally, we're going to move into the third phase of the course that looks at which rights. I'm sure you've heard some people who advocate for rights for non-human animals often get pushback about, well, should animals be allowed to vote in political elections? And those aren't the kind of rights that we tend to be thinking about. So we're going to look at both which rights and sort of which animals should have those rights. And I think what some people might find is that it really comes down to thinking about the interests of these animals. And so again, if that course is something that sounds like you might fancy, I encourage you to look into enrolling. I'm really excited to be teaching it in the fall. All right, so now I'm going to segue over to my last topic, which is this article. And this article admittedly has a very long title that I've gotten some compliments on, but I don't know that I would repeat the length of this article's title. I think about poor, people trying to cite to it, that, this would be quite the long footnote. Well, this article is actually the product of work that began at my time at Lewis and Clark. So as an LLM student, there is a course called Emerging Topics, which I actually took with Dr. Reddy. It's a really great course. It's an opportunity for the online and the in-person students to take a course together. And it's sort of a hot topics, emerging topics. You deal with a different topic, focal topic every week. And the assignment for the course that Dr. Reddy had given us was to write a blog article. And this is a bit of a non-traditional writing assignment for those of us who have a legal background. And so it was a challenge, and it was a really good challenge to think about what's the tone of a blog article. The audience is a little bit different. How do I cater to that? And one of the weeks we focused on zoos. And I have a very sort of personal connection with the Indianapolis Zoo. And I'm going to try to share that with you in a concise time as I can here. So I grew up going to Indianapolis Zoo. My father, who passed away 10 years ago, actually worked with the Indianapolis Zoo through their species survival program. And there's actually a bench at the Indianapolis Zoo in front of the elephant exhibit with his name on it as a memorial. And so my mother had been donating to the zoo sort of, small amounts in his name since his passing. And I grew up in the love of zoos. I understand other people's love of zoos, but as I've grown, I've come to this point in my life where I'm no longer convinced that zoos, or the captivity of animals, I should say, for entertainment purposes is really ethically defensible. And so I was having these conversations with her, and she says to me, oh, but zoos are really good. The Indianapolis Zoo in particular is really good at promoting wildlife conservation, education, and research. And these are the three prongs of most zoos' mission statements. They come out of the AZA guidelines. And so I sat down to really analyze and explore these claims. Now, as you'll see, the blog article focuses exclusively on the first claim, the conservation claim. And that's because in the time frame I had, I couldn't get access to enough information about the other two prongs. And what the article does is it takes a look at an in-depth look at 2019 and 2020, and then sort of a summation look at a 10-year period to assess the financial records of the Indianapolis Zoo and to say what percentage of the zoo's budget actually goes to supporting wildlife conservation. And the AZA guidelines suggest that it should be between 1% and 3%, but many people in the field actually think it should be higher, like 5 or 10%. And what I found was the Indianapolis Zoo was around 1 or actually less than 1% of their overall budget. And I make this argument, or at least I draw this question of whether or not we really think that is sufficient to support a claim that the zoo supports wildlife animal conservation. And I draw an analogy to the work of the Dana-Farber Institute, which is a well-known fundraiser for breast cancer research and treatment. And I ask the audience to think, if we found out that Dana-Farber only contributed 1% of their overall budget to trying to address breast cancer, to find a treatment for breast cancer, would we really consider them a nonprofit that advocates for and raises money for the treatment of breast cancer? And I leave that to the reader to think about and to consider. For myself, I'm not sure that I would. And so this is the article that recently got published in the Indiana Law Review blog. I really hope to continue this work that started at Lewis and Clark by looking at the other two prongs, education and research, and also looking at other zoos in addition to the Indianapolis Zoo. So with that, I will stop my piece here, and I will turn it over to Professor Senatori.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. That was very insightful, and I enjoyed hearing about your journey from student to teaching in our program. So welcome, everybody. My name is Megan Senatori, and I'm the Associate Director here at the Center for Animal Law Studies. And I also teach in our online advanced degree program. I teach animal law trial advocacy, as well as companion animal law. And Rebecca mentioned our emerging topics series. They're a little bit different than they were during her time in the program. It now focuses on a particular topic, and I will be teaching emerging topics on veterinary animal law. So if you come join us in the online program, I hope that I get to see you in our virtual classroom. So with that, I wanted to turn to talk about alumni in action. And this particular webinar focuses on our alumni who are working in teaching animal law, but we have put into the chat a link to all of our LLM alumni in action, working across a broad range of areas in nonprofits, on farmed animal protection, in government, in private practice. So people really utilize their LLM degree in lots of different ways. I am going to focus on just 5 of our alumni in addition to Rebecca. And I'd like to first start with Ever Chinoda. And Ever is, oops, let's see real quick. If you could go back one, Danielle. Oops, I think I have it wrong. I'm sorry. We'll take Tara first. Apologies. So Tara Cooley is an LLM alum from the United States. She graduated in 2021, and she is currently the Animal Law Teaching Fellow at the University of Connecticut School of Law. And she's doing really innovative, great work there, training and mentoring law students who serve as courtroom animal advocates under a law called Desmond's Law. That law was the first of its kind, passed in 2016 in Connecticut. And it basically creates courtroom animal advocate programs where an advocate can represent the interests of the public in those proceedings. Tara is trying to expand those programs outside of Connecticut and is doing fantastic work in that space. So if we could go to the next alumni. The next alumni is Hira Jalil. And Hira is one of our alumni who joined us from Pakistan, and she is our current teaching fellow and adjunct professor here at the Center for Animal Law Studies. She is teaching courses in aquatic animal law as well as food law. And Hira actually introduced and taught the first ever animal law course in Pakistan at the Lahore University of Management Sciences. So that's a little bit about Hira. Diego Plaza is one of our alums from Chile, and we've had numerous alums who have started their own nonprofit as part of their studies with us, and that is the route that Diego took. He is the founder of the Center for Chilean Animal Law Studies and the Interspecies Justice Foundation. And he recently created a specialized tuition-free course in Chilean animal law. The course is kicking off in April, and it has been so well received that they had 60 registrations within the first, say, 24 hours of opening registrations for the course. He has also been the author and academic contributor of a dossier of animal studies featuring works from 18 authors from Argentina, Chile, Mexico, Spain, and more. So that's Diego. And now Ever. Ever is one of our alums from Zimbabwe, and she founded Speak Out for Animals, or SOFA, which is a nonprofit organization that is doing trailblazing work in Zimbabwe. As part of her work, she also created the first ever wildlife course in Zimbabwe, where she teaches it at the Great Zimbabwe University. And that course, like Diego's, has been very well received. Ever has facilitated the training of 20 lawyers and 60 prosecutors on animal laws. So really doing transformative work in protecting animals and developing animal law in Zimbabwe. And then we have one more. We launched a Master of Studies in Animal Law in 2022, and it's a first of its kind program here in the United States because it allows non-lawyers who are interested in learning about the law to study animal law. I wanted to feature, don't have that many alums yet because they're working their way through the program, but I did want to feature one of our MSL alums who is teaching, and that's Anna Brigida Wahlberg. She's from Finland, and she's a university lecturer in public law in Finland, and she is also working on the first textbook for animal law in Finland. In addition to that, some of the work that she's doing is to lead a collaborative effort to create fundamental rights for animals in the Finnish Constitution. And that work is continuing apace. They have achieved the requisite number of signatures, and it has been introduced into Parliament there. So she's doing really great work in Finland to advance animal law. As I noted, there are all kinds of alumni in action features at the link in the chat, and you can see all different types of areas where our alumni are working and using their LLM degrees, and soon our alumni who are obtaining their MSL degree. If you go to the next slide. Just to emphasize sort of the nature, the global aspects of our degree program, we have had more than 100 students and alumni in our advanced degree program, and they now come from 30 different countries. We've got the list for you there, and I anticipate we probably have people from all over the world who are joining us today, so thank you. And this is really part of our mission, which is not only to educate the next generation of animal law advocates, but also to advance legal protections for animals. So people who come study with us take what they learn, take it back to their home countries and develop animal law there. And it's really doing wonders for animals all over the world, as some of our geographic scope has shown. And you can see at the Alumni for Action link. You can go to the next slide. If you're not already connected with us, we're going to transition in a minute to question and answers, but I just wanted to flag, if you're not already connected with us, to follow us on social media. We are on all of the platforms listed there. You can sign up for our quarterly newsletter to stay in touch, and also to see all of the webinars, conferences, and events that we feature here at the Center for Animal Law Studies. So with that, we would like to invite your questions. We have the Q&A is enabled at the bottom, and you can submit your questions there, and they can be questions for myself or Dr. Reddy about application requirements, deadlines, anything related to the programs. They can be for Rebecca relating to the substance of her presentation or her experience as a student. So whatever you would like to submit, you can do there. And while we wait for questions to come in, Rebecca, could you share a little bit about what your full-time job is as a fellow? Because I think that's a great example of the other additional types of work that you're doing as an alum.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for that question. So I did mention, a lot of times adjunct faculty will have additional jobs that they do. And so my full-time position is with Johns Hopkins University, where I am a postdoctoral fellow in Dr. Paul Locke's team. And so we primarily advocate at the federal level for alternatives to the use of animals in science and research. So during the spring season, when the Congress is in session, we do a lot of lobbying efforts. And then during the rest of the year, we focus on trying to sort of get the word out about alternatives and plan for the upcoming next year's season.
Great, thank you for that. We're starting to get some questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and share those with the group. The first question is the program helpful for people who want to pursue staff attorney positions with animal nonprofits? And the follow-up question to that is whether this is a common career path for graduates from the program. So Dr. Reddy, I'll turn that one over to you.
Yes, absolutely. And so our LLM program is really geared towards equipping students with the expertise in different sort of sub-issues within animal law, whether those are farm-to-animal issues, issues pertinent to the use of animals in research and testing, and the like. And the substantive courses, again, are really geared towards equipping those candidates with the knowledge that they need to, an experience of or experience with some of these sort of cutting edge legal issues to thrive in a nonprofit setting where they're working, specifically on these issues. And so, we have students, graduates from the program who are working at, for example, the Animal Legal Defense Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the like, and who are working on those issues that were, integral to their reasons for coming to the program in the beginning. And so we have a number of students who go into the nonprofit sector, a number of students who are graduates who go into academia, a number of students who go into legislation and lobbying, a number of students who actually start their own nonprofits and are doing legal work through a mechanism that they themselves create. So yes, absolutely.
Just one thing to add to that is we also did a webinar featuring Professor Cynthia von Schlichten in September. I will put that link into the chat, but she teaches our nonprofit animal law course, and she's also an alum, and she is general counsel for Farm Sanctuary. So in that nonprofit, she featured in that webinar, she featured the type of work that she does as general counsel, as well as the nonprofit class that she teaches with us. And then in the Alumni in Action section part of that webinar, we featured some of our alums who are working in nonprofits. So I'll try to dig that up and put that into the chat, but that would be another great resource for you to take a look at. Anything that either of you would like to add to that before I go to the next question? The next one is more of a comment, but it is someone who's applied to the program from Brazil. Thank you so much for applying, and just wanted to echo how they have found faculty members to be supportive in their interactions to have the same feeling that Rebecca shared about there being a community here at Lewis and Clark. So thank you so much for that comment. A very important question, do we offer scholarships? Dr. Reddy, I'll let you take that one.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. We offer both full scholarships and partial scholarships. And I would note too, as long as candidates apply by the deadline, May 19th, they're considered automatically for all scholarship support that we offer. And any candidate who is accepted would know at the moment of acceptance what that scholarship offer would be. So we really try to ensure that everybody who applies to the program can make an informed decision about whether to attend.
Great, thank you. The next question focuses on our MSL program, and it is what career advice would we provide to those who want to pursue a career in animal protection as a non-lawyer? This person is interested in applying for our MSL program, and she would like to know more about career opportunities and options through that route. So Dr. Reddy, I'll let you take that one too. And Rebecca, please chime in with any additional comments you have as well.
Yeah, one of the things I'll say is that we're really excited about the MSL program. So it's a degree program for non-lawyers who mostly, want to be doing animal protection work, but don't necessarily want to or need to be practicing the law in order to do that. And I'll say of the MSL program, we've really opened up the number of candidates who can apply to the program and who can equip themselves with a lot of the skills necessary to succeed in the program. And so, the career advice that I would offer is be looking for, potential jobs that you would want to apply to as a graduate from the program and, offer to either virtually or in person if you can, take that person out for coffee or, try to track their career trajectory and, try to apprise yourself of how did they get into that position. And this is true for both graduates from our LLM program and our MSL program, but how do they equip themselves with those skills, or what are the skills sort of necessary? And be bringing that sort of that curiosity, or try to develop that particular skill set through the courses that we offer in our online program. So whether it's I think Professor Senatori mentioned Professor von Schlichten, who really cultivated a lot of expertise in nonprofit law and now teaches in our on our online program, our nonprofit animal law course. What sort of skills does somebody need to thrive in a nonprofit setting if that's where you want to go? So that would be an important course to take. We're also offering this fall our legislation and lobbying course. And so really be looking at our curriculum, seeing if it would equip you with the skills that you would need to thrive in a particular position. And don't hesitate to, contact us at the Center for Animal Law Studies if you want to talk about, your specific interests so that we can offer sort of a guided offer some guidance as to what courses you should take, what opportunities might exist. And if you're an international candidate, one of the things that we're always trying to do is put you in touch with the folks who are doing this work on the ground in those regions. And so again, if you're an international candidate or a US candidate, that's the type of support that we strive to offer.
Can I just add two thoughts to that? First, I just want to say I think the MSL program is amazing because lawyers or legal professionals, we cannot do the work that they do if there's just a bunch of lawyers sitting in a room. And so there's always opportunities at any organization that's advocating for animals for non-lawyer positions. The team I work on Johns Hopkins, we have 3 lawyers, we have 2 scientists, and we have 3 people who are neither lawyers nor scientists. And so, it's very much a needed space for people to develop an animal expertise that is not just purely law focused. And then I want to echo something that Dr. Reddy ended on there, which I experienced at my time at Lewis and Clark, which is simply that in addition to being a great support, the networking that you can benefit from, take advantage of while being a student and then also an alum is invaluable. The Lewis and Clark program is really great at connecting their students to people sort of on the ground doing the work that they're doing, but also keeping their alumni connected. And the peers that you will meet during this program are going to be people that you're going to want to work with and collaborate with in the years to come. Just this year, I am speaking on a conference panel with one of my LLM cohorts. I am having one guest lecture in the fall course. I'm actually serve on the board of one who started a nonprofit. I regularly exchange dog photos with another. So it's just sort of a really community that develops and stays together, both during your time in the program and beyond.
I love hearing that, Rebecca. Thank you so much. And I want to be in that dog photo exchange, please. Just to sort of echo a little bit of Rebecca's comments, we've also seen really cool synergies develop between our MSL and LLM students since that has started. And as one example of that, we have an LLM who just graduated from India and an MSL student who just graduated from the US. But she has a particular passion for animal law and animal protection in Nepal. So they have geared up and have synced up, and they're working together on various kind of programs to try to, they did an interview about the development of animal law. They're going to be working on a blog about it. They're just kind of in the framing part of the relationship, but just coming up with great opportunities to try to work together to develop animal law from both of those expertises. So I have a follow-up, some of which was probably covered in your response to the last question, but it is someone who is a founder of a nonprofit for animal welfare. They do not have an official educational legal background, but they've researched laws. They've taken people to court for animal neglect issues. They would like to know what programs that we have that they would qualify for without being an attorney. And so I'm thinking, Dr. Reddy, that might be a helpful spring point for you to talk about what are the application requirements for someone to apply for the MSL program.
Sure. And largely the MSL application mirrors that of the LLM application with the added requirement of a writing sample. And so you would have your letter of interest, your resume / CV. You would have references and again, sort of your writing sample. And that would basically complete your application. And again, if you complete your application by the application deadline, you're considered for all scholarship support that we have to offer for that cycle. To maybe another aspect of this particular question, this question comes from an attendee who started, again, a nonprofit. And so we have, again, our nonprofit animal law course. And even if the nonprofit already exists and is sort of doing the kind of work that the candidate is trying to do, there are a number of sort of legal issues that attend to the running of a nonprofit, whether that's employment-related issues, issues related to establishing and or sort of upkeep, legal upkeep of the nonprofit. Issues related to what extent or how much one can engage in lobbying and the like. And so our nonprofit course covers that. And if this particular candidate with this question is really interested in companion animal issues or farmed animal issues or captive wildlife issues, our program offers those substantive courses that can hopefully help drive or advance or open up new opportunities to consider legal action to take or the entity to take against people who are basically acting against the best interests of these animals.
Great, thank you for that. I'm going to ask a new question. I lost it real quickly. But I think the question also gives me the thought that we should do kind of an overview of the two types of programs that we have in terms of in-person and online. The question is, does the online LLM program allow for part-time? And if so, are you still eligible for scholarships if you're attending part-time? And so, Dr. Reddy, I feel like that would be a great springboard for you to talk about the in-person program versus the online program, and then to answer the scholarship question.
Sure. I want to just note that the application deadline for the in-person program, both the LLM and MSL has passed. But just assuming that this question is potentially for, a subsequent cycle, we do have some students who have started in the online program, and because they work remotely, or maybe life or some other sort of shift in their personal lives provided for the ability to move to Portland, Oregon. It's something that we've negotiated with them, and we've been able to do it so far for any student who started an online wanting to move to in-person. We've been able to do that. The other thing I'll say is the online program is more or less inherently part-time. I mean, you could complete the program with the number of courses that we offer in a full sort of academic cycle, so fall, spring, and summer. But most students in the online program complete the program in the course of 4 terms. So again, if one were to start the next cycle, that would be fall, spring, summer, and then fall of 2025. So they would graduate in December of 2025. And that's the normal sort of part-time course of things. If a student wanted to, again, in a subsequent cycle, apply for the in-person program, most students, like Rebecca, when she was in the program, graduate in one academic year. Some students have sort of taken the summer, but usually it's fall, spring, and then they graduate. But again, if a candidate has particular questions about the potential to shift from in-person to online or vice versa, it's something that, as the program director, I would work with you to try to negotiate as best we can.
Thank you for that. One thing I wanted to add, and I apologize because I don't think we covered it, but the online program is fully asynchronous. And it is developed that way so that we can reach people from all over the world. So how the courses work is everyone in the class is following the same module at the same time, but the assignments are asynchronous. So there are lectures that are pre-recorded, there are reading assignments, and then students engage with one another on a discussion board. And so the class is all following along at the same time, but in terms of when people choose to watch their lectures, do their classwork, as long as they're honoring the deadlines that are, assigned by the professor, you can choose to do that at 2 in the morning your time, or after you're done with work, or whatever the case may be. So that's why we structured the program that way. So it does work very well for people who are juggling professional, job, family obligations, things like that. So I just wanted to make that note. Few more questions here. This one is, I'm interested in the online LLM program, but do not have much experience specifically related to animal law. The person says, I have 15 years of legal experience in general, and I've tried to find volunteer opportunities where and when I can. Well, the fact that I do not have much past experience in the animal welfare space weigh heavily against me in the application process. And before I pass that off to Dr. Reddy to start with the answer, I just want to say thank you for the question, because that's exactly why we have the online advanced degree program, is because animal law is not accessible everywhere. And we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to study animal law. So that's the exact kind of person that we're looking for. So with that, Dr. Reddy, I'll pass the question over to you for a more full response.
No, I think absolutely, and I think, as Professor Critser's sort of experience attested to, I went to law school to do this work. There were a few opportunities, and they're really growing. 10 years ago, it wasn't what it was 5 years ago, and 5 years ago, it wasn't what it was today. And so there are a number of volunteer opportunities. But if you're really talking about sort of a career shift, certainly that's not something that's held against a candidate. But being able to point to evidence of I'm really dedicated to this, and I can demonstrate that through 2 or 3 sort of volunteer opportunities. It's a nice way to sort of distinguish yourself from other candidates. And to the extent that that past demonstrates sort of a longstanding history, it makes the admissions committee all the more confident in assessing this candidate's desire to be a part of the program, to really take the work that they have done and what they'll learn in the program and demonstrate to us this is really what I want to be doing with my future. And that could still be, I'm still doing my practice as is full time, but I want to start integrating sort of, some pro bono animal law work into it. I think that's totally appropriate. We really want to provide, as many opportunities as we can for candidates or graduates of the program to be doing the animal law protection work that they want to do. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to quit your day job, but a lot of graduates do, once they leave the program. They find those particular opportunities. They can demonstrate that they have that particular sort of educational background. And the last thing I'll say about the online program in particular is that most candidates who go through it, they're doing their full-time job. They have their other professional commitments, their family commitments, and then they're doing this, part-time on top of that. And it really demonstrates just the rigor that one is willing to sort of undergo in order to sort of chase their passion, their desire, and to develop sort of the career that they're looking for. And I think that's something that potential employers really look favorably upon.
Wonderful.
I don't
Thank
know,
you.
Professor Critser, if you want to sort of add to that.
I mean, I think I would just echo what you said, which is exactly right. I think I was in very much the same situation. I didn't have 15 years of experience that I could lean back on, so that's very impressive. But I had a real desire to be in this space, and I had a hard time pivoting because I kept coming up against other people who had more animal welfare, animal advocacy focused experience, and Lewis and Clark, that program really filled that gap for me. I haven't gotten that feedback from anybody, since going through the program. And so I would say if that's the position you're in, I don't serve on the admissions committee, but I think it's definitely worth applying for the program. I think the program would be a really good fit for what you're looking for.
Great. Thank you both for that. This is a good follow-up, I think, in regard to opportunities available in animal law. This person is a retired attorney, and they're wondering whether there are remote opportunities, either in the US or internationally, either full-time or part-time in animal law. And let me just kind of start by saying I have been doing animal law since 2001, and I cannot tell you how much evolution there has been in the availability of options and the location of options in terms of being remote. We have a Slack channel for our students and our alumni where we share job opportunities. And the vast majority of opportunities seem to me to be remote at this point. A lot of nonprofits and animal protection organizations since the pandemic have pivoted to having remote employees. So my personal view is I feel like there are a lot of both full-time and part-time remote options in animal law. That seems to be kind of where things are headed. But I'm curious to hear from Dr. Reddy and Professor Critser with regard to your thoughts in whichever order you want.
Yeah, sure. I think that's right. I think, we all sort of survived 2020 pandemic and have welcomed in this sort of new wave of remote work. I think it is more and more popular. I will say personally, my team is based out of Baltimore, where Johns Hopkins is based, but I live in Boston, so my work is remote. I go down once a quarter to meet with the team face to face, and then I go down a little bit more often during the congressional session. But so, certainly that is opportunity. I think a lot of the major animal advocacy nonprofits have remote opportunities as well. The one thing I will say is the only time that I've personally encountered a real issue with remote work is doing the lobbying work to some extent, because they often want you in DC. But even that's shifting. More and more we're doing lobbying over Zoom rather than in offices. So I think it has become more and more available, and I think we're really only going to see it continue in that direction.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Dr.
and I won't repeat either of those. I think those are both really accurate and really, really helpful. The one thing that I'll say is when we're thinking about international, especially if we're talking about paid work, there can be, some barriers in terms of what an entity where an entity is able to hire somebody. So that would be sort of the one caveat that I would put in there. Um, but there are some international animal protection organizations, and if you're interested in working for one of those entities, the barriers are probably likely fewer, depending on the country in which you're in.
Great, thank you both, and thank you for the question. I'm going to take, we have two questions here that I'm going to kind of take together, which is, can you talk more about what the application process is and what can be done to increase someone's chances of being successful in applying for the program?
Sure, and I'll put into the chat the link to our general animal law LLM page, and from there you can click on the in-person option or the online option. So whichever modality you're interested in, and all of the application materials are listed there, and I think I mentioned them earlier. So to maybe answer more specifically the second part of that question in terms of making themselves more successful, the both the in-person and online programs really put an emphasis on the candidate's sort of writing, and so that can be demonstrated in the in-person program with the writing sample that's required. But in both programs, the strength of the writing as it's exemplified by the statement of interest, also by the cover letter, or also by the resume. And, also when it comes to the reference or references that are required, whom are you asking for those references? What do those references really speak to? So do they speak to me as a candidate, the work that I've done in this space, and instead of, generic examples, are there concrete examples? Are there examples that sort of attest to the work that I've done and the impact that that work has had? And so really being attentive to when you're looking to your recommenders, what sort of recommendations are they offering? And they may not know what exactly it is that you're looking for. And so I would recommend to anybody who's applying to the program to really try to get them to really try to encourage them to speak to certain particulars. And those might be items that you demonstrate to them or that you give them when you give them your sort of statement of purpose. So they can sort of draw upon and echo really some of the substantive aspects of your candidacy. And so they're really, again, sort of supporting your efforts there. The other thing that I'll say is really helpful for the admissions committee is, not just why do you want to come to this program, but what do you see in terms of the programmatic offerings that we have in terms of substantive courses or otherwise? How do you see that leveraging you as a candidate and the work that you want to be doing after you graduate? And so one of the things that we really believe here at the Center for Animal Law Studies is that, education has this transformative effect. And we want to see from you, how do you imagine yourself being different from, day one applicant and, whether you're the in-person program or the online program, so a year or a year and a half later, who are you as a graduate? And that's really exciting for us. And it's something that we want candidates to be thinking about.
That was great, thank you. Just to add to it, and I know Dr. Reddy talked about this previously, but all applicants are automatically considered for scholarship support. And just to springboard off what Dr. Reddy just said, for scholarship support, that's one of the things that donors want to see is how are you going to use this degree to make a difference for animals? How in the real world will you transform this education to improve the lives of animals and advance their legal protection? So on the scholarship side, that's what we're looking to, in addition to high quality applicants, strong writing skills, strong letters of recommendation, just to add that into the mix. Yeah, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
think Professor Critser, I think you were maybe going to add to that as well,
Oh, I'm
or
so sorry.
No, don't apologize at all. I had a little inside baseball I was going to share for those who are attending and watching online. Although I think it's also probably a bit of common sense, which is just to say, proofread, and have somebody else read it and give you feedback. I consider myself a fair stickler when it comes to my knowledge of the English language and grammar. And Dr. Reddy knows way more than I do and has schooled me many a times. So you will make yourself stand out if you make sure that all your materials are grammatically error-proof and well-written. And you can do that just by investing the time in the process.
Right. And I think the other question that's in the chat, you answered, Dr. Reddy, in the course of a prior response, if you want to just take a look at that and we'll go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so this question, asks if accepted to the online program, is there, an opportunity to attend a semester in person or take a summer course in person? And the answer is usually yes. It's not something that we guarantee. It's something that so far we've been able to accommodate. And the one thing that I'll note is, depending on the cycle in which courses are offered, we just want to make sure that if a student, for example, happens to take, let's just say, spring of this next academic year here in person after having taken fall online, would they have been taking all of the courses or some of the courses, or maybe, yeah, some or all of the courses in that spring semester that would be offered in the summer and or fall of the subsequent year, such that if they decide to transition back to the online program, that they wouldn't have any courses that are offered in that fall semester. So we just want to make sure that if a student wants to do that, that we can provide for that, and that we understand clearly, what the impact is likely going to be for their timeline to graduation. The other thing I'll note is that for in-person candidates, the school requires that they have the equivalent of what our students have to have for health insurance. And so if you're transitioning from online to in-person and you don't have health insurance at that particular level, it's something that you would have to get. And I think other than that, it's largely procedural, administrative changes, and of course, academic advising as to like which courses are appropriate for that candidate.
Great, thank you. And I see we're coming upon the end of our hour together. So before I turn it over to Dr. Reddy to close us out, I just wanted to note that if you're interested in other webinars that we have done, you can find them on our YouTube channel. We have done a webinar about farmed animal protection featuring Professor Joyce Tischler. We did a webinar on the global nature of your advanced degree in animal law featuring Hira Jalil. As I noted earlier, we also did a webinar with Professor Cynthia von Schlichten featuring nonprofit work and how to use your advanced degree in that realm. And there are probably others that I'm forgetting, but I wanted to let you know where to find those. One very quick question that came up, Dr. Reddy, and I think it can be answered quickly, which is someone is asking whether there is a dissertation component in the online MSL curriculum. So if you could answer that one, and then I'll have you close us out.
Sure. So there is no dissertation for the MSL or the LLM program. A number of our courses offer significant or feature significant writing components. And so if writing something of a fuller length is of interest to a particular candidate, they can certainly sort of self-select those courses to be able to develop something, because I appreciate that for, both the LLM and MSL programs, graduates may be wanting to look to other educational opportunities and could certainly develop something of significant length to do that. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for attending this webinar, and just a reminder that the online application deadline is May 19th, 2024. And if you have any additional questions about the content of this webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at cals@lclark.edu. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. And again, thank you so much for joining.